Episode 8 begins with Richard Xanthos, who's part of the Xanthos Foundation, and with him is his assistant Christine, telling everyone that he has an announcement to make, that there's a treasure hunt going on at the Xanthos mansion. Then Christine says that there's something even better. Only two teams will be allowed to compete, and whoever wins gets a priceless artifact as a prize. But Richard said that there's a problem. He has no idea which two teams are allowed to compete yet, but he'll be investigating. So meanwhile, at Starlight Mansion's backyard, just moments ago, the Starlight Girls won the volleyball game. And why? Because Annie had thanked Jim for being such a teacher into teaching her. So we go to the Take the Time song by the Holograms. So after the song came to an end, that's when Video had a conversation with Christine, who's Richard's assistant. And of course, Christine thanked Video for interviewing the Starlight Girls for her. So Video told Christine, when I heard about the treasure hunt, I thought the Starlight Girls would be perfect for it. I believe you're right, Christine said, because she appreciated Video's compliment. So back with the Misfits, as you may have guessed it by now, they too have heard the news about the treasure hunt at the Xanthos mansion. So Eric and the Misfits need to enlist a team of their own. So what did they do? They found the three girls that were perfect for the Misfits team: Ellen, Molly, and of course Sandra. The first thing Eric did was to pass out each Misfit girl a free meal, courtesy of Misfits music, of course. So when Pizzazz was asking Eric, "What's all this for?" So Eric told Pizzazz of the Misfits, "Trust me, this will work," after she told him that he must be out of his mind. So when the Misfits girls ran up to Pizzazz, she told Eric to get rid of them. "Just play along, we'll be fine." And then minutes later, Christine shows up with Eric to have a chat with him. The first thing that Eric said to Christine says, "I'm so glad you've made it. I'm here to tell you that when we've heard the news about the Xanthos Foundation's treasure hunt, these Misfits girls right here would be more than happy to attend." So while the Misfits were busy passing out food to the Misfits girls, Christine wants to know from Eric, do they do this a lot often? So, as persuasive as Eric is, he tells Christine, "Well, of course they do. I'm so glad that you feel that way," Christine says. And she was more than happy to have the Misfits girls attend at the treasure hunt at the Santos mansion. So after Christine heads off, Eric was more than happy to give the Misfits girls some money. So while Eric was busy passing out money to the Misfits girls, Pizzazz wants to know, what's going on here? What's your game here? So Eric told Pizzazz the good news. "Why, haven't you heard? You and the Misfits girls are going to the Santos mansion for the treasure hunt contest." Of course, Molly was more than happy to introduce herself and the girls to Stormer. And Molly just said, "Now don't expect any favors unless we're being paid. In cash, of course." "Of course," Stormer said. And then the Misfits girls ran off. And of course, Possess was horrified because she just told Eric what obnoxious little brats that they are. "Well," Eric said when he made a snide remark to her to say, "They remind me of yourself when you were young." "What did you say?" Possess said. "Well, what I mean to say is," Eric said. "I happen to agree with you even more," Eric said. So long story short, after Christine told Richard the good news that there are two teams competing for the prize itself, the Starlight Girls and the Misfits Girls. So meanwhile at the Santos mansion, so as planned, the holograms along with the Starlight Girls, Chrissy, Bonnie, and Ashley, had arrived at the mansion first, but they soon realized that Pizzazz and the Misfits Girls had also arrived there as well. But before that could happen, Bonnie wants to know from Jim, "Are you sure we're going to win?" "I'm not sure yet," Jim says, "but all we can do is just do our best and just have fun." So, after the holograms and along with the Starlight Girls, and of course the Misfits Girls as well, and let's not forget Pizzazz of the Misfits, Richard, the first thing he did was to welcome everyone to the Santos mansion. So Richard tells everyone, "Pay attention. Each of the team members will get four riddles, and it's up to the team members to solve these four riddles." But wait, there's more, because Richard said if each of the team members have solved the riddle correctly, they each get a map. But that's not all, because Richard also says is that whoever reaches the key first will be the winner. Of course, Christine was more than happy to tell Jim and Possess that each of them will be their team captains. So you know what this means. Jim will be the captain of the Starlight team, while Possess will be the captain of the Misfits team. Richard then said to both team captains, "There is a catch. None of the team members will ask for your help in any way. So that means they're not allowed to help their teammates, the team captains, that is." In other words, if neither team received any help from their team captains will be disqualified. So Jim goes first to speak in her case to say, "Don't you worry, I won't." And so Possess promised to do the exact same way with her team. Molly, meanwhile, just received an OK transmission from Tech Rat and Eric in the Misfits van in the parking lot of the Xanthos mansion. Now, Tech Rat, being the genius that he is, tells Eric that every time that Molly receives a riddle, this computer can do the rest. So Eric taught to Molly to say, "This is Eric speaking. We're good to go. Now remember what I told you to do. And whatever happens, don't let the Starlight girls win. They don't have a chance." So meanwhile, everyone left the Santos mansion. So Jim gave the advice to her Starlight team to say, "Playing fair is better than any prize." In the meantime, Possess gave the advice to the Misfits team to say, "Winning is everything." And so Richard agrees to give both team captains each a map. So once each team captain has a map, Pizzazz and the Misfits team rushed off and said, "Good luck to you, ladies." So that's now up to the Starlight team to catch up. So anyway, the Misfits team didn't waste any time to meet up with the Indian on a canoe. His name is Hiawatha. So the Misfits team got their first riddle. When was Hiawatha born? And the answer is the shores of Guchigumi. Today we call it Lake Superior, in Michigan, of course. So now that the Misfits team have the first map for getting their first riddle correct, now they have three more to go. So the next place for the Misfits team to be is at Looking Glass Lane, so they head off. Meanwhile, the Starlight team are looking for the Arabian Gardens on their map. So since the Misfits team had already crossed the bridge, the Starlight team must do the same. But then Ashley of the Starlight Girl says, "Look, there's a shorter way." So thanks to Ashley finding the log bridge, and just when Ashley, Bonnie, and Chrissy were about to make it across, the Misfits team was shaking the log bridge, and that caused Bonnie to fall into the water. But before Bonnie can fall into the water, Sandra of the Misfits team told Molly, "I don't think this is a good idea." But despite Sandra's warning, that's when Bonnie fell into the water. Things looked bad for Bonnie until Hiawatha rescues her and boarded her on his canoe. As for the Misfits team who saw what had happened, they were off to Looking Glass Lane. Ashley, who got upset about what had happened to Bonnie of the Starlight team, she says, "Those girls are just as bad as the Misfits are." So thanks to Hiawatha, Bonnie's been saved. When Jim, who saw that Bonnie is safe, she and the rest of the Starlight team members caught up with her, and Jim was asking Bonnie, "Are you okay?" And Bonnie says, "I'm fine, but we gotta catch up." And so that's what happened. So good news for the Starlight team, they made it to the Arabian Gardens. So Jim and the Starlight team went up to Shiadazad, the character from 1001 Arabian Nights. So Shiadazad gave the Starlight team a riddle. How many voyages does Sinbad had? Well, that's simple enough, but we'll get back to that later. So, back with the Misfits team, they found Looking Glass Lane, and that's when they met up with Alice of Alice in Wonderland. So, Alice gave the Misfits team the next riddle. Alice is on her way to a tea party. Who would she meet there? Well, that's simple. That's the Mad Hatter, of course. Just like the first time, the second time was the charm for the Misfits team, thanks to Eric and Tackrat, who are still in the Misfits fan, of course. So once the Misfits team got the second map, so it's now off to the next riddle. So they have two more to go. Back with the Starlight team at the Arabian Gardens with Shiadazad, they still have no idea until finally at last, I'm not sure which Starlight girl had an answer, but she said that there were seven. Congratulations, Shazad said. So that means the Starlight team finally had their first riddle answered and had their first map. So they still had three more to go. The Starlight team, that is. Back with the Misfits team, now that they have two riddles down and two more to go, all they have to do is find their third riddle in Sherwood Forest. So Ellen made a suggestion. She says, "Why don't we go through the waterfall?" "And get all wet?" Pizzazz asked. "No way." So Pizzazz made a better suggestion and said, "Why don't we go through the Japanese gardens instead?" And so that's what the Misfits team did. But before that could happen, Sandra, the Misfits team, just told Pizzazz, "The rule says that you weren't supposed to help us." "Who cares about that?" Pizzazz asked. And so the Misfits team were on their way to the Japanese gardens. Back with the Starlight team, they were trying desperately to find a castle where King Arthur used to live before he went to Camelot. But however, they somehow got lost. Then Chrissy of the Starlight team says, "Uh-oh, here comes trouble." And wouldn't you know it, they're possessing the Misfits girls of the Misfits team. So Molly of the Misfits team went up to Bonnie and says, "I see you got a second map already. You're catching up, huh?" But by surprise, Molly just took the map away from Bonnie. Bonnie wanted it back from Molly, but Molly refused. And that's when Pizzazz of the Misfits team just told Jim, "Now don't forget, we weren't supposed to help you." So after the Misfits team ran off, that's when the Starlight team went to catch up with them. So with the Ahead of the Game song from episode 22 in last season, that's when the Holograms team went everywhere that the Misfits team went. From the Toppery Garden, for instance, then to the Statuary Garden where all the statues were. Then finally, at last, both of the teams were inside of the maze. In fact, it was the biggest and the longest maze that they've ever seen. So after the song came to an end, the Misfits team went to hide in the maze while the Starlight team went looking for them. Now, Sandra of the Misfits team was getting concerned and worried, and she's asking a question. "What if the Starlight team couldn't find their way out of there?" "Well, who cares about that?" Ellen answers. And so it's up to the Misfits team to find their way out of the maze. Now the Starlight team is getting worried. So Ashley goes first to say, "We'll never catch up with them now." And even Chrissy agrees with her and says, "We need that map to win." Then Jim told the Starlight team, "We got to get ourselves out of here before we get lost." So they went every which way in the maze. But then Bonnie starts to worry to say, "Oh, great, now we're lost." Things looked hopeless for the Starlight team, and then Bonnie says, "We'll never get ourselves out of here." Chrissy tries to cheer up her friend the best way she knew how, to say, "We can't let the Misfits team beat us." Then Ashley says, "Wait a minute. If I read enough books about mazes, then maybe I can get us out of here," Ashley suggested. So the Starlight team went ahead and followed Ashley. Back with the Misfits team, who still have two maps to go, well, good news for them, they found Sherwood Forest, and there's Robin Hood and, of course, Little John and his band of merry men. So Robin Hood was more than happy to give the clue to the Misfits team to say, "What's the name of the king that is the brother of King John?" So Molly answers that it was Richard, and so that leaves the Misfits team with three maps down and one to go. Back with the Starlight team that was followed by Ashley trying to find their way out, and lo and behold, they found King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table at the original castle where King Arthur was before he ruled Camelot. So now that the Starlight team have found King Arthur, so now it's up to King Arthur to give the Starlight team the next riddle. And the riddle is, what quest did King Arthur do? Why, the quest for the Grail, of course. As legend has it, the quest for the Grail has been handed down for many generations since the Knights of the Templar. So, King Arthur granted the Starlight team the map. Next, the Starlight team went up to the Three Musketeers. Of course, the Three Musketeers was more than happy to give the Starlight team the riddle, which was, who was the fourth Musketeer? Very simple, of course, D'Artagnan. And so both teams are two maps apiece. So all they need now is the third map to win. So now the Starlight team and the Misfits team have two maps apiece. So it seems that the Misfits were about to win until Sandra tripped and fell and hurt her ankle, case in point. So when Pizzazz had heard the bad news from Sandra, she just mocked at her and says, "Gee, that's too bad." "Besides, we have a game to win," Pizzazz said. So Sandra says, "Wait a minute, you can't just leave me here." At first, Ellen was about to make a suggestion, but Pizzazz just cussed her off and told her team that winning is everything, just like she told them before. So when Pizzazz and the remaining two girls, Molly and Ellen, walked out, that's when Sandra says, "You can't just leave me here." But they left anyway. And that's when the Starlight team starts showing up, and Bonnie felt bad for Sandra. But Bonnie's not the only person that felt bad. Chrissy and Ashley felt bad too when Sandra told them the bad news. When Chrissy asked Sandra if she was okay, well, Sandra not only told Chrissy that she's okay, but the Misfits team just left her behind. So after Chrissy learned about it, she says, "Well, that figures." Now it's Ashley's turn to speak in her case to say she's getting worried that if they try to help out Sandra, then that means they'll be disqualified for sure and that they'll lose the contest. But then it's Chrissy's turn to tell Ashley, "We cannot just leave her here." "Please go on ahead," Sandra says, "and do me a favor, beat the Misfits team for me." "Besides," Sandra said, "they don't deserve to win anyway." So then it's Bonnie's turn to ask Jim a question. "What are we going to do about it?" "I'm afraid I cannot help you in this," Jim says, "but whatever you girls decide is up to you." So back with the Misfits team, they just met up with the Roman man and with his boat from the book The Odyssey. So the guy has told the Misfits team a riddle. So the question was, what was the name of the mythical one-eyed creature? Why, the Cyclops, of course. And that gives the Misfits the fourth and final map. So now it's up to them to reach the island to where the key is. Back with the Starlight team, now with Sandra on their side, well, the good news for them, they found Long John Silver in his ship. Of course, good news for Bonnie, the Starlight team got the last map when Bonnie answered the last question, which is Treasure Island. So now it's up to the Starlight team to catch up to the Misfits team to be on the same island where the key is. Well, good news, both teams have made it to the island. So now it's up to one of the team members to get the key first. So Molly runs off first, and then Ashley runs to catch up with her. And good news, both Ashley and Molly have found the chest with the key inside, and both of them grab the key at once. So when Long John Silver, who was Richard in disguise, and Shiatazai, which was Christine in disguise, that's when they both realize that it's a tie. So now it's up to Richard to give both teams one last riddle, and whoever solves it first is the winner. So Molly relayed that riddle back to Eric and Techrak back at the Mistress Band that was parked at the Xanthos mansion. That was until Eric decided to take matters in his own hands, but not if Techrak can do anything about it, and just pushes Eric away, and which causes the wires of the computer to explode, and so was the computer itself. Back with Molly, just when she was about to get an answer, that's when Long John Silver, who was Richard, decides to catch her in the act and asked Molly, "Is this true? Have you been cheating?" However, Possessed, the captain of the Misfits team, tries to frankly deny it and says, "It's just a pen. How can you cheat from there?" And then Possessed says, "Since nobody solved your riddle, then that means we're going to take the prize." But then out of nowhere, Sandra says, "Wait a minute. I know the answer." And so she answers the book. So the Misfits team won. But then Sandra says, "Wait, no, you didn't." Then Sandra of the Misfits team decides to turn against her teammates by saying that all you did was leave me behind. So guess what? I'm not on your team anymore. I'm with the Starlight team now. That made Bonnie happy to hear it from Sandra. And she says, "Well, you got that part right. So you know what this means. The Starlight team won." Even better, the Starlight team has welcomed Sandra into their group. So back at the Santos mansion and inside the library, so now that Sandra's got the key, all she has to do is use it. And so she did. And when she opened up the cabinet full of books, the first thing that Sandra did was to take the book called Son of Hiawatha. So then it's Ashley's turn, and she picked out Alice in Wonderland. Then Chrissy goes next, and then last is Bonnie. So the first thing that Bonnie did was to thank Richard and said that this is the best prize that I ever had. So Molly asked the question to Possess. That's the treasure? Books? That's it? Then Possess says, I should have known and it was a trick to begin with. Then Jim spoke in her case to Possess to say, books are priceless. And after all, they're the only way to make people learn. And of course, she's not kidding. Then we go to Open the Book song by the Holograms. It was throughout the entire song that each one has their own books, well, except for Possess, of course, and every character that goes along with it, from the Three Musketeers to Sherlock Holmes. And of course, there's no better way to learn, according to Jim in her case. And so that ends episode 8.